I appreciate it. I did want to mention one of our council members had a medical appointment that she was able to get into, and if she missed it, she'd be out another 2 months. So Councilmember McDowell won't be with us this morning, and Councilmember Bode is on his way. I just wanted to say thank you for everybody coming out. I think it's important for all of us to get together and talk and see what kind of direction we can share, how we can help each other. And I think the first thing we wanted to do this morning was kind of go around the table and make sure that everybody knows everybody, even though the name tags are there. So I'm Jeff Knighton. I've met all of you, I think, and I'm the city manager for Shelton, and we'll try to skip around and make sure nobody has their mouth full when we go go next. Councilmember?
Hi, Karen Sherman, City Council, Shelton, and brand new, so excited to be here, and I love that we're all getting together to get to know each other. I think this is going to be fantastic, so thanks for having me on board.
Randy Neville, Mason County Commission. I know most of you look forward to getting another one tonight.
I'm Dick Taylor from the Port of Shelton. I know most everybody here. I'm glad to meet the new ones and welcome aboard the new members who've just been elected. It's a real adventure.
Deidre Peterson, City of Shelton.
Del Gutierrez, City of Shelton.
Mark Neary, I'm the new Mason County Administrator. So thank you for Jeff and Wendy for being so welcoming and getting us together to meet all the councils and boards. I think it's going to be a good, productive discussion.
Agreed. Good morning, Joe Schmidt, City of Shelton.
Kevin Judy, Mason County.
Sue Patterson, Port of Shelton.
Wendy Smith, also Port of Shelton, and I just want to say thanks to Jeff. He really was the brains behind this event and really got it put together for us. And Mark, you can't use new for very much longer.
What is that? Let me know what that timeline is.
What is it?
I've got a few more things I need to get through.
Let's say I'm the brains behind this after it's done and successful.
That's funny. Sharon Trask, Mason County Commission.
And I'm Christy Buck from the Port of Shelton.
Eric Nisco, City of Shelton.
So really the purpose is to get together to have conversations, and we've put together 4 broad topics. Each one of us is going to lead one part of the discussion or introduce one part of the discussion, but what we really wanted to make sure of is that this is just an opportunity for all of us to, or all of the elected members to discuss their shared vision for the community. And then at the end we'll have some closing comments and maybe set this up for future meetings. So the first one that we had on here is something that's kind of been percolating, I guess, for a little while. There's been a little bit of discussion surrounding it in the past, and just wanted to mention it again, and that's working with our county partners and our partners at the port surrounding future annexations and the potential for an agreement with all of the jurisdictions here on timing, on implementation of development standards within the urban growth area and those types of things. I can give a little bit more detail, but I'd welcome any comments that any of you have on that topic. Should I call on somebody?
Who's gonna bite? Yeah. Who's gonna bite?
I'll bite.
All right.
From the Port of Shelton perspective, we're not a regulatory agency like all the other agencies. So, but we are a taxing district. We're a municipal corporation. And what is the advantage to our constituents to be annexed into the city? Right now, we're under county development regulations and all that sort of thing. So what is the advantage? I know what the advantage to the city. Now, I was a city commissioner when we started talking about this 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And we're still talking about it. So, but what is the advantage to our constituents, the taxpayers?
So I think that there's a couple slightly different taxing percentages. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, although we did put them together before when former Mayor Rogers and I sat down with you this long before COVID. You and Wendy previously, and I think it's slightly less in the city, although there are some additional elements that are a part of that, like the business and occupation tax. I think that consistent development standards will help encourage development within the Ports District and help with economic development, particularly surrounding our new branding initiative. And ports are with the port's help and in partnership with the Port Commission.
Okay. God, deadly silence.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I'm going to want to look at all of the pluses and minuses of the effect of how does it benefit the city, how does it benefit the county, how does it benefit the port, what happens to our tenants, what does their bill change if we did that. Just all of those things, or the property tax differences. I mean, we just have to know all of the pluses and minuses from all the perspectives of the parties, in my opinion. I don't have enough information about that right now, but that's where I would need to go to move forward, is to see what, I mean, obviously, top of my mind says that the city would like us to do it, and the county would probably not like us to do it. So we just need to figure out what's best for the port, port folks, and what's best for the future of, growth and entertaining some new options at the port. So that's where I'm at. I'd have to get more information.
Yeah, and our taxpayers are your taxpayers.
Yep.
You're the same. I mean, we are essentially the school districts.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially the port district, is all the school districts in this area. So we're the same tax base that we're talking to. So we need to know, in my opinion, we need to know what that impact on those ratepayers, those taxpayers is.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, the first time I looked at this was 20 years ago when I was on the city commission, and I was looking at it, of course, a completely different perspective from that side than our side here. But I'm interested in keeping the costs down to our rate taxpayers and developing economic development. I mean, that's why we're here. I think more importantly than the discussion of annexation is the discussion of how do we work together with our assets and the city and county assets to expand economic development in the community. Mm-hmm. And we are the government that was organized and established to do that in the state constitution. So that's what I'm looking for.
Well, from the 10,000-foot level, we all realize that the UGA boundary lines are there, and that eventually annexation is said eventually may be a very long time, Dick, but there is a reality to that. So creating some predictability within the process for economic development and for folks in those areas, I think, is one of the priorities council has discussed with Jeff, as we want to make sure that as folks are looking at locating in those areas, they know what the expectation is, and whether they're locating in the city or the county or the port, we're providing good, strong foundations for them as they're starting those endeavors.
Yeah, I think Deidre's point is really well taken. It is about, Dick, yours too. I mean, it's about economic development, but it's also from that perspective about predictability and stability for folks that might want to locate here. And, from that end, I think, that this is an opportunity for our administrators to work together, take our respective, councils and commissions questions, our concerns, do a real good analysis about what does this mean, what does this look like, and then from the city's perspective, to Dick's point, what is the timeline? What are you hoping to do, and when,
and where?
And where? What's the process, and sort of. I can just speak for myself, and I'll make an assumption that for most folks here today at the elected level, we probably haven't gone through an annexation in a while. And so there's some learning about the process that probably needs to happen, administrator to board, just about what does that look like? What is the process? So, is annexation inevitable? Or, is it? Yeah. And so if so, then how do we do it in a non-adversarial way? How do we work as partners with shared interests that do ultimately come back to consistent utility service, economic development, and our shared goals of, frankly, bringing jobs and opportunity to Mason County.
And on that front, from being on the Economic Development Council, Christy, Randy, Kevin, it's very interesting when you hear about potential growth and people wanting to bring business to Shelton. Ideally, the port, right? Economic boom, right? Economic development engine for the county. But we've definitely heard that building space is a premium. We need it. We need buildings to bring commercial and light industrial entities in. They need utilities. They need sewer. They need water. So I know at times annexation sounds like the city is looking for a cash bailout, but that's absolutely couldn't be further from the truth on this. The city has the utility, very close proximity to the port on both Johns Prairie and as well as, well, not as close on Johns Prairie, but a couple miles away on Johns Prairie and very close here within the UGA on the port property. And, I look at this as more of a mutual aid thing, as, where we can come in and support the growth at the port, so we can put people on sewer, because we know the challenges with that, with septic, and we also know the challenges with water rights. The city's doing our part to work through reclaimed water, and we have a long-term plan to eventually stop, jettisoning effluent into the Hammersley Inlet and being good stewards of the environment. And I would love to have a partnership where we can work together on, leveraging those assets, those utilities for the, for the greatest amount that we can. And at the same time, we want to make sure that, at the end of the day, the growth is happening, whether we want it to or not. And we have to be able to manage that. We have to be able to manage that adequately, and we have to think about it. And I look at this conversation today as just the foundational elements of, like I said, that longer term partnership. And I kind of don't even like the term annexation, because I already know in a lot of our heads we have this perception of what that means. But again, I come back at this from let's look at it more of a mutual aid or mutual aid type of a partnership here, and seeing, if there's ways that the city can assist and we can progress forward. So
I'll just say on that, coming back to the conversation between, the staffs of each organization, figuring out what each council or commission's gotta habits are in an annexation process within the parameters that are in law. What does the port gotta have in order for this to be successful in their mind? What does the county gotta have, city? So just being able to kind of identify those as sort of shared starting points, I think would be really, really helpful, at least from my perspective.
I would echo Commissioner Schutte and Councilmember Schmitz and Deidre's and Bill's and everybody's comments here, because I think this is the first most important step. Mm-hmm. We're in this room, we're talking about it, we're all Mason County, and so working as a team, I think that we can come to an agreement or an understanding. And I don't know, I just see this as the good first step.
And I think just to add to that, throw a little bit more out there for people to comment on. One of the reasons that we have talked about the interlocal agreement or the memorandum of understanding is to set a timeline in place so everybody knows what's going to happen and when, and it's not a surprise to anybody when an action takes place. So there's some predictability there. So if you make an investment in a certain area, that you will have that investment and make use of that investment for a set period of time. Predictability is what this is all about, and what we're trying to project as a community to people that are interested in investing here. And that's what kind of what the ILA or the MO, whatever form the agreement takes, is kind of what it's aimed to do, is provide that predictability for us and for people that are interested in investing in our community.
So I guess thoughts on continuing the conversation. Obviously, lots of probably thoughts in everybody's heads, ruminating on what this all means, but it would be good to discuss a little bit on how we kind of do move forward and what the next couple of months might look like between now and when we might talk next. So I can help, the council can help provide direction to Jeff, and obviously the commission can provide direction to Mark, and same thing for the port. It would be maybe good for us to discuss, is this a hard no and we're done talking about it, or what does the next couple of months look like? you know, what kind of commitment do we want to make today to continuing this conversation? And,
Well, I don't think that any of us in the report have said no.
okay.
We want more information. And what is the process of annexation? Is it strictly at the government level? I mean, the elected level, or are the constituents asked for input into what their desires are? I don't know.
So
Is that all process? Part of the process?
I can provide a little bit of background. I don't want to get too much into the nuts and bolts because you'll all fall asleep. But basically, there's many different methods of annexation, but by far the most popular one and the one that's most effective is called the Petition Method. And at that point, 10% of the area to be annexed, 10% of the property owners, and 10% of the registered voters are asked if they want to move forward with this.
Only 10%?
Well, that's the first step, and then that goes to, would go to the city council at that point. Do we want to move forward with this? And some of the considerations are, can we serve it with urban level services, water, sewer, all those kind of things. If the council at that point decides to move forward, the next step is 60%. So you need 60% of the registered voters and signatures representing 60% of the property value of the land to be annexed. So that's kind of how that process works. There's other ways, like if you put it on a regular ballot in November, it's 51% of the people in the area to be annexed, just voters, not, you don't have to have assessed value. There's a couple other ways too, but the petition method is by far the most participatory with the people that are going to be subject to the annexation and the one that has the most public involvement. And all that being said, just one other little piece. It has to be within our UGA, our urban growth area. We can't annex anything outside of our urban growth area, whether the property owners want it or not. So that's kind of the first step toward annexation, actually, is when the comprehensive plan is adopted by both the city and the county, where the UGA boundaries are set. And that's basically, it's based on a 20-year growth projection. So that's kind of how those boundaries get set up to begin with.
And Jeff, is that growth projection determined by the most recent census?
Well, yes, but the Office of Financial Management at the state level takes that, and obviously the closer you are to that 10-year census, the more accurate OFM's numbers are going to be. But cities and counties you have to adopt a new comprehensive plan every 8 years. So it doesn't always fall real close to that census number, but it's based on OFM's projections, which they release April 1st of every year.
And I know that there's a bill before the legislature asking that 8 years be turned into 10 years.
Yep, it was 7.
Yeah.
And then it went to 8, so it wouldn't surprise me if it changes again. Yeah.
And annexation doesn't have to be contiguous, right?
Yeah. There's too much stuff running through. So it has to be contiguous to the current city property line, or current city boundary. But many and there's a lot of case law on this, so it's still working its way through the courts, but many jurisdictions have tried to do what they call cherry stem, which is, follow the road right out and then take the land that you want. That's been shot down several times, but it's also been upheld several times. So it's just a matter of, there's a lot of very nuanced factors that go into that analysis.
And I'll be honest, we have a couple, sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
I've never been a fan of the annexation concept, but at the same time, the way you structured it, I'm going to say that I'm not against it if we end up in an agreement where the people themselves have the greatest say. I have a hard time being against that for several reasons. One, I do want to point out, though, when you're talking about the tax rate currently, I think it is different when you start throwing in your road tax, if you have a park tax, throw all that together, I think the numbers are...
Yeah.
We don't have a road
I
tax.
think it's a little different, so just want to put that out there for everybody. But with that, as county commissioners, our job is to take care of those that are out there in our area. We put investments into our area with the idea that we're gonna also have a return on that investment to take care of each other. But if we fail, then something like this is an opportunity for them to benefit and grow easier and be able to do what's best for them. Like the port is having them here today is the perfect example of that, because they have to make decisions that will financially benefit them and their people that are in their buildings. And if the county doesn't provide enough to where they are taken care of, then to be honest, their job, because I was working for 6 years, is to leave us if it's a possibility. So having, I've never been a fan before, having an agreement, if it actually said that we follow the petition process, period, if that's the way it goes, and we agree with that, I would even be more supportive of having our codes be more the same, because one of the reasons why you don't want to do that right now, it's like preparing the table for somebody to come and take all your food. So you want to be careful. But again, if we could show that they choose when they want to, because we failed, or you can offer them that much more and they can grow, I'm not going to say I'm against that.
Am I wrong? The county has already agreed to the UGA boundaries, correct? So it's no surprise that we would like at some point to annex some more property to help our city grow.
Yeah, that happened way before I was over here. So, and I've been here a long time. So.
Well, don't they change often, the boundaries?
No, only every time you update the comprehensive plan, and I believe the last time that the plan was affirmed anyway, not the new one, was January of 2020, I think.
Yeah,
but that wasn't the...
We had 2017, but we didn't do any big changes
right,
on our...
in 2020, no, yeah.
No. But they were accepted as at some point we would be annexing that property.
Yeah. Well, and then, yeah, I don't see any reason. I'll talk to my council and make sure that I get direction from them. But putting together an agreement with provisions like that, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't want to do that.
I mean, the UGA is designed to help us grow, correct, as a city?
And again, if I do want to make clear, I only spoke my position.
No, correct. No.
For the commission. If that came off that way, I apologize. That's definitely not what I meant.
Yeah.
And I think with the urban growth boundary, initially what I've learned over the past couple of years on, what growth looks like and what this all means is we recognize, especially with some of the things with Wyra and how that panned out, we recognize that high impact development in the county or at the port is going to be a hard road, right? And like I said, I come back at this with the mutual aid type of, we're here, we've got resources, how can we help continue growth in a structured way? We don't want to see things stagnate, because business wants to locate here, but they can't connect to sewer, or they don't have the appropriate amount of power, or, those are things that we hear pretty regularly. And again, we've got some resources at the table, the port, the county, and I think it would be good to coordinate that and to get to kind of some maybe next step discussions. It'd be good to have that workshop. And I agree with Commissioner Taylor as well. Just getting with the subject matter experts on this to kind of weigh out the financial impacts, what that looks like to existing, and overall, because at the same time too, yes, the city does annex a piece of property or an area. We are responsible for that. We're going to be assuming that liability, and we're going to be assuming any risks associated with that too. We're going to have to provide services to that. So, police and fire and public works and all of that. And remember, where does your responsibility then end, and where does ours pick up? And I think those will be difficult numbers, right, to kind of predict and look at in terms of impacts. But again, it's going to be a little shift potentially of responsibility, and there comes a cost to that. And I know the city would have to assume, there would be some investment that we would have to make in our world to just make sure that we can support it. So we don't want to go into this again. It's not a bailout scenario. We're looking for a cash grab or anything like that, because it's wouldn't be kind of ignorant to think that if we didn't assume any financial impacts at all as a result of annexation. So I think it'd be good to have a workshop where we could talk about let's talk about financials and what that looks like, can just be real specific on that and dig into those details. I'd love to be a part of that. I don't know if it, throw it out to the rest of the group, if that the entire group wants to be part of something like that, or we want a subcommittee something like that, or you know, and do the typical bureaucrat thing and task force it or something like that. But
blue ribbon. Yeah.
I would be a fan of that as kind of a next step. I think the financial side would be good to dig into from all sides, and then we can understand each other's implications as this moves forward. So.
Right, because then you're bringing in the entire picture. It's not just land or a business. There's expenses, like you said. There are some places I'm thinking, yeah, we could get the city to take
give
that.
it to the city.
Well, just the winter storm, Commissioner. It's like, you know, we were struggling to keep up with the winter storm just recently, just like everybody else, right? And you know, it's you drive down Shelton Springs Road, and the county just was nailing it on Shelton Springs Road, and then all of a sudden it went to compact snow and ice, and it's like, man, why can't we work together on something simple like that and just plow through, you know? And those are little things where I see these partnerships growing, and we can make these good decisions. Because what the public sees at the end of the day is, you know, one side's doing a better job than the other side, right? Where all our resources are focused downtown or on the hills. You know, we've got a couple, you know, pretty decent hills on a snowy day, right? So again, I'm going to beat this horse, but this is a mutual partnership. In my
Couldn't
opinion.
agree more. And that's what I wanted ever since, even before I took office, is for the city, the county, and the ports to all work together. We all have ties to this community, and we all love it. So the more we can work together,
Amen.
the better.
I'd be
we
happy
all
to
look.
serve on a financial workshop.
Yeah. So just to sum up this part of the discussion anyway, what I've heard, I think, is for Mark and Wendy and I to get together, find out what each body has as their must-haves, and then see how we can maybe come to an agreement there, and then come back to a smaller subset of each one of these elected bodies, and present that information to them as part of a pre-conversation with all of the elected bodies together.
Jeff, does the council have do they have a plan for, like a prioritized plan? Here's what we want here's our path of annexation as we expand out into the UGA?
We don't yet,
Okay.
and it's because I wanted to do that in partnership with the port and the county.
Yeah.
I didn't want to put something in place and say, hey, here's what we've got. We want to develop that together.
Jeff, could I also ask that if you do put together that plan, and if it is including a petition method for us to look at, that you also include a minimum size. The reason why I say that is I'd hate to be nickel and dimed all the way through. If we have an area that we didn't serve that needs to have those benefits, I'd like it to be more than just this block and these people that are angry today.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's for us. I think it's a opportunity to take a real life example. If the city has a priority of an area that you guys are looking at, to really dive into the detailed level of what does this look like, and then we can go through those components of here's the potential impacts, here's the different service areas. I think working together to communicate helps all of us not be surprised, which is always nice. But I also think that it helps us be able to be informed and talk to our constituents when we get asked questions. As long as we have a similar message and a similar response, and we're all on the same page, we may have different perspectives of what the takeaway is for us or what the gain is for them. But having a consistent message, I think, is super important so that people don't get confused, or that you don't get into a situation where you have all of these different ideas that are going around that just confuse the issue. I think that in planning it, you get to a point where you don't. I think I just read something in the paper the other day about Thurston County. You know, they're trying to annex now these islands of land that are spread throughout the county, where for some reason they annexed around it, but left it county.
Oh, we don't have any of that in Mason County.
So how do we plan it appropriately so that as the city does annex space, that you have this contiguous lines
Yes.
all the service levels can clearly understand. You don't have the snowplow going, into
Picking up
to
his
one
blade
area.
while he goes back to the box and putting it back
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that those are real life examples of things that we can all look at and agree upon.
Yeah, I agreed. So that's kind of what I heard. As long as everyone's comfortable with that on this topic, at least, I think that's the way we'll move forward, and we'll come back to this group after we follow the process.
Can I make a point? I know a lot of us are okay with taxation if we have representation.
Yep.
So would it be possible to expand the city council to 9 and to have 2 people come from the newly annexed area in the next election? Or do we just have 2 open seats that, so that we don't have to run against an incumbent?
Yeah.
I'm just saying that just so 2 people in the new area will have representation in the council in the city, and we're not just, you're part of it now. Like we're the government. I mean, you're the government because we're the people, right? We the people. So, I'm just saying, if we do an annexation, I would be okay with offering expanding the city council so that there is voice in the areas that are annexed.
So there are.
Point is though that our constituents are already citizens of the city of Shelton, and the county as well. So they are represented right now.
Yeah.
Our district is within the city limits.
There's
So
nobody
our
who's not.
voters are the same as yours.
Okay. But when we get our ballots, they're all pretty like, who can you vote for? So
Yeah. So I think with that, thank you. Happy to hear the comments. That provides me a little bit more insight and will give us some direction, I think, as we move forward. And I think the next topic on economic development, Wendy was going to lead. So
Yep.
thanks.
So I think it's a good lead-in, talking about annexation, because really, when we talk about the communities as a whole, and this is all of our communities, it's not we're the port, you're the city, you're the county, we all join in that effort, and economic development is key, and those of you that serve on the board for EDC realize that a lot of the wants out there for businesses include sewer and include those services that, right now currently we can't provide at the port. So if we want to continue to answer those and answer them in a fashion that we're going to win those, we got to do this. We got to talk about it. So next topic is economic development opportunities, and not only is it bringing new business to the community and diversifying what we currently have, but it's retaining those that are currently here. We have some big companies here that are currently kind of seeking, do they stay or do they go? And so just a discussion kind of related to, how we see this group trying to work together to, an annexation, of course, and that talk is a big part of that, but how we see interacting to keep those companies here and to entice new companies to come. So, anyone?
Yeah, I'll jump in on this. This is a really critical conversation. One of the priorities that I've had since coming onto the commission in 2017 has been how do we establish the county as a leader regionally in economic development, and then how do we make ourselves competitive statewide for opportunity. And I think one of the things I think we have to start with giving the city a lot of credit for working as hard as they did to get the latecomer agreement on the water line, that issue resolved with the state. The next conversation about sewer capacity expansion is an important one that ties into this as well. But where are our sort of mutual benefits from working on these projects together? It's the mindset that a strong city is a strong port, is a strong county. And so when we look at what opportunities are out there, whether they be generated through the EDC or they be generated through the port or other avenues, what are those elements that they're looking for? What are the gaps that we have in being able to meet the needs of that, whether it's a prospective business opportunity or it's a business retention opportunity? What do they gotta, back to the gotta have it, what do they gotta have so that we can bring those jobs and opportunities here? We have a lot of developable land. We're quickly becoming one of the last places in on the Puget Sound that has that. How do we do it in a way that's sustainable, environmentally friendly, but also that we don't sacrifice our competitive advantage with our regional neighbors. So that's kind of the mindset, and I think we just have to, be honest about where our weaknesses are and honest with what our strengths are, and start to build around those. And the other point that I'll make too is we have a really strong legislative delegation that also shares this priority, and so I think when we have capital budget requests, when we have legislative requests that we all see benefit in, let's take advantage of the strength of our legislative delegation and really put them to work. I know how they like going to work for us. They love being asked for things. So I think that's a good opportunity to even build those partnerships, very locally with the city of Port and us, and then also at the state level.
And I'm sure they'd rather get an ask from all three of us than
Coordinated? Absolutely.
It's good to see us competing against each other.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I want to take a moment to say a special thank you to the ports, because there's been a lot gone on in the last 8-10 years that we've gone through here. Being on the EDC for all those years, I've seen the ports have learned to move like water. They literally have changed in so many different ways, so many different things that have happened in the community, whether it be fire in a location, whether it be the economic difference, the need for buildings because you have none, the opportunity to even open up for even consideration at times of sales or anything to try and make things happen. I know you guys have had those conversations over the years because we've all been a part of it. So I want to give a great shout out to them, and we all need to learn to work the same way for economic development. With that being said, I know there's been times in the past we've had issues like the fire marshal issues and stuff that's happened. And we as a commission, we are now doing a full-time fire marshal, trying to find some ways to overcome some of those issues that have happened. It takes too long to get there, but we need to find more of those opportunities. Since we're working together, give us some leads of what you think would make it easier for you to do what you do. The truth of the matter is, if it's easier for you, it's going to be easier for everybody in the county. It all works the same. But again, I want to give a little shout out because all these years you guys have had to shift and change. You had at one time all kinds of property available, then you had no property at all available. You had no buildings. You've been pretty impressive. So.
Yeah.
Thanks, Randy.
Sometimes I think we look at it, when we go out and ask for money, we look at it as a competitive process, right? So all of our competitors are the people that are surrounding us asking for the access to that same dollar. The coordination side of it, of how we can work together as administrators and bring information back to our respective governing bodies to say, how do we work together and actually have common requests? If you bring that to the legislature, then they look at that. It's a much stronger request when we're able to work together and come with a combined request where it's going to benefit all three of us. And even if it doesn't benefit us, if we see that the value of the request, being able to support that side of things, I mean that goes a long way with those folks. Commissioner Trask and I have been meeting with legislators and our lobbyists over the last couple of weeks. And Representative Griffey, I think, pointed specifically out, if you guys can coordinate and work together with the surrounding entities, governmental entities that you work with and around, then that's what we're looking for. So I do think that it makes us much more competitive as a community when we coordinate those things.
Right, and I think he was intending that to be countywide too, so we need to bring in the other ports and the other partners. The more we work together, the better we can be to create an environment where people really want to come.
I've really seen a shift in the years that I've been on the EDC board of the regionalness of that too, and I think it's been a really cool thing. And where they were talking about, instead of saying, don't go to Lewis County, go to Mason County, don't go to Grace Harbor County, go to Lewis County. And now all those counties can all stand up together and say, just come here, somewhere here will benefit all of us. And I think that instead of that idea of, that's a fantastic idea and a concept that I think is really important. And it narrows down even to this level of, don't say don't go in the county or don't go in the city, but just come to this region because we all benefit from the regional success.
The concept of working together is not new. And we, a prime example is we have a company that's on port property right now that we're trying to retain. They'll remain nameless. But we're working with the county, Commissioner Schutte has been involved with it, working at the congressional level, at the state level. We're all working together with it. We've been doing it. We just need to keep going and expand that concept. And I don't know if we'll be successful or not, but at least we're trying with all those entities. And we work together very well. I haven't seen any problems. Have you, Ken?
No, I think we put aside our respective flags, and we look at it as just an opportunity for us to keep jobs here, keep opportunity in Mason County, and it's great to have everybody kind of lean their shoulders in on a shared goal. It's really, I walk out of those meetings and I'm really just energized by that. And I think we could really with this meeting in particular, we could really be an example to the rest of the county about how important partnership can be and how important it is to work together. And it's not about kingdom building; it's about building Mason County. And and I think the other element that we need to include in this conversation is our counterparts at both of our public utility districts. Utilities, power, water, go hand in glove with sewer in terms of being able to build that foundation for economic development.
When we're talking about opportunities, one area that I know has been a passion of mine and definitely other council members is we recognize that regardless of who comes here and who wants to build and bring more jobs to Shelton, people will need a place to live. We've been struggling with that for a while now, and that's where the city loses a little bit of ground, right? Because buildable land, right? We struggle with that. We don't have a lot of open space for residential, multifamily, affordable, workforce, you name it, market rate, and a lot of that is going to hit us around the borders of the city limits, right? We're going to start seeing that growth, and so if a company starts to expand in the UGA, you better believe there's going to be a drive for residential construction, and keeping up with both commercial and residential from a planning and a permitting perspective. Not a planner by trade, but I could just imagine that is a giant, spider web of things that we would need to be doing. So that's definitely, at least from my purview, an opportunity is when we're talking about housing, doing that in a strategic way and not forgetting about that, doing that in a strategic way. And I want to come to one of Mark's points. A couple of years ago, I think we proposed, and I know the EDC was supportive, at least some of the folks on the board were supportive, of joint lobbying for economic development purposes between the county, the city, the EDC, basically the membership of those organizations. And, I've heard now at least a few times that coming at legislative asks, especially where the community economic development strategy, the list of infrastructure projects kind of comes along with that. So if we have a nexus, we all contribute, I believe, to that list. That definitely is helping us drive those legislative asks, and we come at it from a regional approach with our respective lobbyists as a team. That's a force to be reckoned with, in my opinion. So I'd like to open that one back up if there's opportunities to work together in a joint fashion in the legislature as well. I would be open to negotiating and discussing that further too. So.
That would be awesome.
One of the things that our commissioners did is they actually hired a lobbyist specifically for Mason County this year, which so far it's been amazing. I really butcher her last name, but Deborah Mungia. And she has really been super amazing, I think, so far. The communication is just awesome. But absolutely, I mean, I think that's exactly what we're seeing, is that the opportunities to think about the dollars that are there now, as well as the potential dollars that may be coming. And there's a lot of talk about a huge amount of money coming into Washington State as a whole within the next couple of years. So really, planning some of that and doing some of this work ahead of time to really get these things defined as we move forward, then when we go into a long session next year where they actually do a lot of budgetary stuff, then I think that will be that much more competitive. So I think that this is great. I think this is the start with Jeff and Wendy and I. We've talked about how we're going to expand that out. Jennifer with the EDC has definitely reached out to say, hey, let's do this together. I think that including some of the PUDs, including some of the other potential utilities that serve our areas, super important.
Yeah, there's a lot of money coming down from the feds. You've got transportation, you've got infrastructure, so many different things that we can all work together to, it's going to benefit Mason County as a whole, right? So if we all work together and come up with some good plans, good ideas, good asks, and then, do you guys still have your lobbies?
Absolutely, we do.
Yeah? So we should connect our two lobbyists, and that way we can continue to work together to push some of those budget requests through.
They know each other. Troy
Yes.
knew her name immediately. So.
Good. Yeah, Troy's a good guy too. Yeah, two amazing lobbyists and with good relationships with the legislators. So.
And who have good connections in their lives to Mason County, who have have an appreciation for this community and connected to it. And, I know our proximity to Olympia might, make that happen anyway, but people who are jumping at the opportunity to help us, to advocate for us and what our community needs are is really exciting. To have those folks down there in our legislators' ears is great. And the SEDS list, I've mentioned a couple of times. I mean, there is really an opportunity to get synergy around the projects on there. We all submit projects to it. That really ought to be the blueprint that we use for determining, what's out there. I mean, we have, projects that are, at various stages of planning and readiness. Everything from, projects that have money secured that, you can put shovels in the ground tomorrow, to projects that still need some help with design. And so, being able to pick the ones that have the biggest return and that are the ones that align with our legislative delegation's priorities, I think we can get a lot of synergy around that. And so continuing to work that process, I think, is really important for economic development here.
Well, and maybe the port we do not have a lobbyist. We do not contract with anyone. We typically, I think in years past, have relied upon WPPA to be kind of our spokesperson. And as we've all seen, I think, the process is a good one and they're very involved, but a lot of times, you've got these larger ports that kind of have a louder voice, so to speak, and then you've got a lot of us little guys kind of just tagging along, or the issues are, the Columbia River or whatever that doesn't have any effect. So maybe bringing us into this conversation, maybe we can, monetarily, have a partnership with these two lobbyists, and they can, also follow port goals as well. So.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
WPPA is the Washington Public Ports Association.
Gotcha, sorry.
Yeah.
Use that every day.
Yeah, sorry.
I think there's something to be said too, and Commissioner Judy and I approached the subject about county and city doing some good lobbying a few years ago. And in my mind, it's yes, the projects themselves and sites are important, the infrastructure is important, but we also have seen sometimes that there are policy issues that cross our boundaries. So there are things that you're seeing that we may not have seen yet that may have an impact on the growth within the community. I hope those would be related as well. And these meetings are a good first step, but it's not always shovels in the ground, although it's very important. Part of it too is looking at what is the policy that's standing in the way of growth, or what can we do to entice folks. And that's something we've been really interested in from a policy level, is how can we support affordable housing, economic development, and those types of issues. So hopefully these conversations will continue and we can better identify what some of those opportunities may be.
Look at the changes that were made last year to law enforcement.
Yep.
And their ability to address certain things in our. I know we're all hearing that from our constituents. We're living that. That's a policy issue that's ripe for us to really work together on to get fixed for our sheriff's office and your police department. And I think, that's a great example, and I think the points are really well taken there, DJ.
So You want to sum up kind of a couple things that we heard, and then we'll move on to the next
Yeah.
one?
So I think we talked about that we're all. I think everybody can agree we're all on the same page on economic development. We all see growth as not only important but essential to our communities, and so we'll continue. The three of us will start kind of that effort. And somebody mentioned the PUDs, and I know in the meeting, the large meeting we had to retain a current large customer. I mean, their information is so valid and so valuable for clean power and different rates that you see, in different regions that are not so friendly. So just continuing those discussions, we'll get that started. We'll continue, and then I think really the biggest point, I really am serious about. We'd like to be a part of that lobbying effort. I think that's going to be kind of crucial in the years to come. We're going to replace that burned building. We're just getting started. We had a kickoff meeting to do phase 1. We're estimating the cost of what we lost. We're not going to build it like it was, but we need that cost to go forward with insurance and say, no, really, you're telling us it's this cost, but it really was this cost, and then now we're going to build it somewhere in the middle. That's going to be a 30,000+ square foot building that's going to be ready to go and ready to lease. So know that's coming. It should be on the fast track. We have an emergency resolution, so we don't have to go out. Well, we will go out to bid, but we don't have to take a long process to do that. So all these things are kind of coming together, and so economic development is probably top of our list for sure. So.
Mark, I think you had the next one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They stick me with sewer.
Wastewater.
Oh, wastewater. Thank you. Yeah. I was thinking, how do I spell it? Sewer or no? Yeah. No, I think that looking at this stuff, and really, I was focusing on our shared boundaries, right? And so when we're looking at where the city has sewer service, and we look at some of our rural county or area that the county serves that butts up next to city items, we have some areas that really need some services. We have a mobile home park that has failing septic systems that for us to come in and provide a solution to them, independent of having a sewer system, would be crazy. It's impacting the water quality in the area. It's impacting the quality of the water that we're recharging into our aquifers. So there's a lot of people that are definitely interested in finding solutions for these things. So looking at the opportunity to work with the city to potentially provide sewer service for these areas where we don't have sewer capacity or sewer services regionally or geographically in a location that can serve these folks, then absolutely, I'd love to see and identify how can we work together on those things to provide a benefit to those folks that live specifically in that community. I think it's a great example that where we can work with the city to say, hey, how can we get these individuals connected? What does it look like? What are the opportunities for grants that can probably bring money in to help solve this problem? Because sewer is expensive, and and when we look at communities like this, they're in what, I hate the term, but they're in what we would call a severely distressed financial category that opens up opportunities. When their systems fail, opens up more opportunities. Okay, now you got a failing system that you need to correct right now. So how can we work together to kind of find opportunities to, number one, provide a solution for the impact to the environment, but number two, provide a solution to these individuals that is reasonable and can actually help them out. So kind of interested in talking, and maybe Jeff can talk a little bit more about the city's plan. I know it's been mentioned that we're trying to really push the treatment side of the sewer away from our bodies of water and into areas where it can be treated and then recharged into the aquifers that surround us.
Yeah, I think that after discussions with City Council, one of the directions that Council has asked us to explore anyway is the opportunity to provide more treatment at the satellite plant and stop eventually, and this is 20 years down the road, but stop eventually discharging to Oakland Bay and Hammersley Inlet because one, the regulatory requirements are not going to get easier to do that. And two, we can provide help to our tribal partners and to our local pretty substantial leg of our economic development with the oyster beds and the seafood industry that is substantial in this community. And it will allow additional recharge to our aquifers, which will increase stream flows into our creeks, which will help with salmon hatcheries and or salmon fisheries rather, and all of those aspects. It is a tremendous ask. It's a lot of money, and it's going to take a long time to do. But I think starting as soon as we can to get that done will make the end result come quicker than it would otherwise. And that's kind of what we're looking at at the satellite treatment plan, is the capability to expand that, which would help the community that Mark referenced a little bit earlier, and it would also go a substantial way to helping economic development in that northern UGA area where we're outside of it here, but pretty close to it right now.
So, Joe, you said something that's just stuck in my head, and it's so right that I can't let go of it, actually. You mentioned about the absolute need in Shelton for that multifamily housing, for those type of developments, and you're right, you have to do something on that place. And then, Mary, you mentioned about the UGAs being designed to, that isn't what they were designed for us, where we're going to put, maybe they should be. We have areas, and again, I'm just speaking for myself, we have areas that are just outside that we have not put investments in yet, okay? But in order to get those type of connections for your guys' sewer, maybe as we're getting ready to go into the comprehensive plan for ourselves, we should be talking about expanding the UGAs for those purposes, because if we expand it in certain areas where there's no development now, to help you to be able to get the multifamily, in the beginning, it works with us too. The reason why I say that is, as we start to get there and we get those built, we get that task force in, that's when your grants come in. They don't give you grants for speculation. But if you get those homes on the outside of it, you get those grants to go to them and hook them up. So it's a win-win for everybody around, and then at the same time, you're getting your housing that you need, and we're getting the hookups that we need. We get some tax base in the beginning, and you move them away a little bit later with the other services. If we go with the petition concept, it seems like a win-win-win for everybody. But we definitely probably should be focusing at the county level of sitting down with you and talking about that next layer out that we've never looked at it that way, because you're not going to be able to do it without it. And I don't know, I hate to miss that opportunity. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because that really stuck with me, because you can't unless we do.
Thank you. Fully agree there. I'd love to get a map out, get the crayons, you know what I mean? And, not to offend anybody, you can pick your red pen if you'd like. But yeah, get that out and start looking at these areas and what this means, and then and again, not necessarily just fall victim to whatever developer comes in next and buys up property and wants to do. I mean, we want to make sure we have some skin in the game there. And for me, it's super important that we're taking care of the people who've been in our community and who've located and decided to plant roots here, and we don't forget about them too. And even with growth, and regardless of the price tag or the dollar figures there, we still have the 10,150 people in the city limits that we have to take care of too. And so just like you guys in the county have your folks that you have to continue to deliver high quality services to. So yeah, I'm all for that. I'd love to sit down and really hash out those boundary lines and lock it in on what we think we want to do there. And, to jump on thoughts and feelings on expansion, very contentious conversation at times for us is, if you build it, they will come, right? And we've all, I think, touched the hot stove on that one, and it's like, so we're a little, I'd say for the most part, somewhat a little gun shy on that. It's difficult without having something better than just a handshake or a head nod. I think we're looking at doing things in a more formal way. Development agreements, planned action ordinances and things like that. And I think that's important. And I think when we get talking about common code and common practices, so the metric of success, in my opinion, is when somebody says, I really like doing business in Mason County with government, and it's not that big of a deal. And hey, I'm gonna relocate out here. It's less hoops to jump through. But anyways, I think on that front, it's interesting dynamic on, do we take city residents' tax base, and kind of gamble on whether or not growth will occur, and in some cases it's going to happen. In some cases it's pretty definite. In other cases it is a little bit of a challenge. But if we come at it consistently together on some of that, I think that would be helpful. And it would be good to learn from each other on some of that as well. So
maybe what we could do also, the Public Works Board, we have the commerce staff. They have a matrix or a formula to decide what areas are severely distressed. And so maybe we could get together, talk about some of these areas around our, the Shelton borders and the port borders, see if there's areas that really, what's our first priority? Where do we really need to start concentrating on first before we, stick our fingers into other areas, so to speak.
I think it's called planning.
It goes back to kind of the essential piece of this conversation, right? Which is community by design rather than by default. So a lot of times we end up responding to things in a very reactionary fashion rather than being proactive and looking at how can we set ourselves up for success to be ready for whether it's people coming in, grant dollars, other opportunities. So I think the more that we can have these conversations and identify those and kind of give opportunities, and I realize, as Mr. Nolan said, we have to be flexible as the ports have been, and realize things may change, and we're going to have to be cognizant of that and be open to fluidity. There is a definite benefit to having a community by design rather than by default.
What a novel concept.
I'll say, some of you may have heard we're having a conversation about sewer and Belfair. But one of the things that is really interesting about these processes is how impactful a planned action EIS can be. We're also going through that process. That's a big investment that the county's making for the Belfair UGA, and I think that might be an interesting area for us to work on with the city and the port in terms of just what are those planning elements that are missing, and what are those what are the components of that? We're for the first time probably in a long time we're having a legitimate conversation about impact fees in the Belfair UGA. That's something that you all are accustomed to in the city. What's the sweet spot for that? What's the best way to get a return on our capital investments, through the collection of whether it's CFCs for sewer or impact fees for transportation, those kinds of things. I just really credit to the administrators who put this agenda together, because each topic seems to really follow the next in terms of how they're related to the work we often do. So well done on that. So, when you're talking about planning, like Sue said, like we're all talking about, it's just so critical to do that in a joint fashion. So there is some, we can learn a lot from everything that you're doing, and hopefully vice versa too. So learn from us and we'll learn from you.
And I'm not going to use the word standardization, but I think having compatible regulatory requirements is attractive to developers. So they're not getting this from the city and this from the county, and then.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Actually, I never thought about it. With that being said, then that should probably be considered to go both ways.
Yeah.
We've always looked at it the other way, where the city theirs, and we want to adjust the counties to go with the city. Maybe we might want to consider the city looking at making things more along with what the county's doing, if that's more helpful.
I don't think any singular. I'll just speak for the city. I don't think we have all the best answers on anything, everything. So that any opportunity we have to learn best practices and implement those within the city is definitely an opportunity we'll take a look at. There's no head and cement syndrome here.
There's a lot of big brains out there. Get them all together.
Yeah.
Imagine what we can accomplish.
No doubt.
Well, Jeff won't be surprised to hear me say this, but common sense goes a long way.
It's not so common.
I have a question from the port's perspective on grants and grant writers. Do you guys both have a specific grant writer, or is it just kind of internal? It might be you, it might be staff.
We've
Hack away at it.
we had an in-house staff
Remember.
writer, and then we had, if you all recall, we had some budget cuts in 2017.
Yeah.
We've talked around that issue a little bit, but we've been pretty successful using a contractor
Okay.
So
as well.
I don't want to stun or sprite my counsel, but one of the things I was going to bring up with them before too long, and this isn't out there or anything, but there are agencies and companies that will write grants for you at no cost, and then they just take a percentage of the, if the grant is awarded, they'll take a percentage of the grant. It's usually relatively small.
I thought you can't do that.
Yeah, there's companies out there that do.
Because it was a pay-to-play was illegal to do for grant writing some years ago, so we want to make sure we do that in Washington State, because that was an issue.
Yeah.
You know, for us on our grant writer, I'm a big fan of it. I really am. And the sad part is the county changed the grant writer to a grant manager or administrator. And so we lost a lot of opportunities that we should have. And after we cut that position, which I disagreed with, millions of dollars came in because of all the work that I'd done, a little $1 million directly for some of the health issues that we had, the overdose awareness, all that stuff from that work. But it was late. That person was now gone, and all that stuff for the future was gone. And we went back to doing individuals. One of the best parts about having a grant writer is they spend their time looking for the grants. It's one thing to apply for it. That's not the hard part. Copy and paste works exceptionally well for a grant writer. Finding, that's where the work is. And even if we were able to contract it out, and I think what they do is they charge you a certain amount of what it would be awarded. When I have to say not what it is awarded, because that's pay to play. Boy, I'd love to see all of us. What if we all came together? We're talking about doing it for legislative. What if we were to come together for a grant writer to look at all the different opportunities that we have, even if we invested in that for a year or 2 years, to have them on staff to look at that, even if it's inequitable. How much you want to bet that person pays for themselves in each of our sections pretty quick?
Well, and for the port, we don't have the amount of grants opportunities, I would say, that counties and cities have with roads and different, sewers and different infrastructure. We have a separate amount, most likely. So to have one person dedicated to just that doesn't make a lot of sense for us. So we just kind of do it internal in-house.
But you do.
Me.
I was a port commissioner for 6 years also. You do, actually. You have different pots that we don't.
We do, yeah.
That's what the beauty of it is, in trying to bring everybody together. We're looking at some of the stuff with Shelton. You guys have hydron cleaners. Perfect example. It has issues on the ground, chemicals and stuff like that. The ports literally can have access to dollars to clean it you could never even imagine. And a partnership between the city, the port, and everybody else could change all that. And then you partner with the county and make it some type of a hostel or something where you can take care of some of your real other issues that are happening in the county. There's some great opportunities with that, but the ports are very strong, just in a different area.
I feel bad Jennifer Berry is not here today, so I apologize for maybe throwing the EDC out there, but on this particular topic. But this has kind of been brought up in that circle as well, that it might be advantageous to work with the EDC to get a contracted grant writer that collaboratively the 3, 4, 5, 6, well, the entire whoever's a member, I guess. That's potentially a resource that could be tapped, and if we work. Collide. That way it's not potentially owned by one entity or another, it would be something a little bit more mutually shared. I'd be definitely interested in talking about that and then looking at our dollars in terms of budget at the city for contribution towards, fair cut towards what that would look like. But I agree, I think it'd be, to have some professional staff on at any organizational level, that is their job, is to be focused on making the best use of other funding mechanisms, so we don't have to, tax or fee our own citizens to death in the community. That'd be good to. I think that would be worth the expense, in my opinion. So.
I think the people in the community would agree with that.
Well, there's also a reality that seeking grants and identifying these opportunities is one leg of it, but we also have to look at how that dovetails with the existing staffing, planning, et cetera, because it's all well and good to get that opportunity and have the dollars roll in, but if you don't have the staff to put it in place and to be able to support it, there's a sustainability piece of that we need to be really cognizant of. The last thing anybody wants to do is turn around and say, thanks for giving us that great opportunity. We actually can't handle that and turn back opportunities. So that's something we've been really focused on, is making sure that we, as we move forward, and we should continue to move forward, looking at grants, looking at other funding mechanisms, but we also have to make sure that we have the pieces in place to successfully execute those plans when the time comes.
Yeah, we've seen that happen.
Once or twice.
Yeah, I agree totally.
Yeah, that's all I got. I think it kind of expanded beyond sewer capacity, but I think it's a great discussion and some opportunities that we can look at there to, again, it's just this whole coordination theme, right? How do we work together? Can we share resources? Can we find partners in other governmental entities that work with us in and around our communities to benefit each other? So.
How far away is our sewer from that?
So the Spice Streets development, right about there. And then it's much shorter distance.
That's
to
like
the,
a, what, 3 blocks?
No, it's over
4 blocks.
But on the other side of 101, it also exists, but the problem is boring underneath. You gotta go underneath the highlights, which is
We definitely don't want another 100 people homeless.
no.
Or 200 if,
Yeah.
I don't know how many homes over there. There's quite a few though.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly developed mobile home park. And they all have their own individual septic systems
Yeah,
that have been in place for years and years and years. So
it's right there across.
And there is a possibility of going for grants for that because it has been an
Yes.
environmental issue.
Yes.
And there's hookups already there to get. There's different, several different pockets you can go after for those grants.
Yeah.
Department-
That's just not just one for sewer, that actually covers some other environmental things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Department of Health is a big one because of the issues.
Well, that letter from Department of Health gives a lot of money.
Yes.
It does.
Yes. And I just have to throw in another Commissioner Schutte brought up public utilities, and again, from what I'm learning from the EDC perspective, there's a lot of power needs, and the PUD, at least PUD 3 as I understand it, there's substation projects, and those are, an engineering, very difficult, from an engineering and planning perspective, and very expensive. So there's some time there, but I think it would be good to loop them in as well on this, because if we can flush our toilets but we can't turn the lights on, that's probably a problem.
On next fiber too, we did. Let's continue to talk about
Yes.
access.
Right. And I think the substation that's out on Lynch Road, how quickly that came together, and that was because of a partnership that went up because there was there was buy-in from everybody, and they saw the importance of it. So if there's a need and a will, and we've got teams that want to do it, I think we're in.
I definitely think that there is a broadband tree growing because there's a lot of money for broadband opportunities. And they're really focused on finding unserved communities, so communities that don't have any access to broadband, as well as the next level up would be underserved, right? So that they don't, there's certain criteria that they want to have at the end of that project, but in our rural communities, I'm sure there's a ton of opportunities. And I know that PUD 3 is pretty heavily involved in that. I know that we're working, as a county, we're working and helping providing some ARPA funding to Public Utility District Number 1 and HCC?
Yeah.
Is that right?
No.
HCC.
HCC,
And we've
yeah.
also given money to PB3, not just talking Shelton, but we're talking this lower area. I used to have a marketing company and we worked cable companies, and you have Comcast out through here, and you have Hotel over here, but all that other area, all of it, they're not. They're not on any of that. They're just left out there, and being able to serve all of them who all of our lives. The reason why I said it, you bring Wi-Fi to a home, you increase the home value greatly. There's a lot of people that want to work out here by living out here, and they can't in those areas without some type of Wi-Fi. Yeah, it's like the who you I'm dealing with right now, where they haven't even had a phone for a couple of weeks. The reason why they have CenturyLink, and CenturyLink won't come out to fix it, and so the whole community has been out. But we just finally got them a fiber up there, and so they're all hooking up, and this has actually been a wake-up call. So the ones that didn't hook up are calling now to try and get hooked up so they can have phone through the internet. But that had a big increase in a big impact and increase in the value of their homes and the work that can be done from their homes. So we need to think of the whole area.
So I think the last item on our agenda is potential land exchanges, and this is get toward the end, a little bit more concrete, but again, no decisions, nothing like that. Just throw concepts out in ways we might be able to help each other achieve goals for the entire community. Two of the ones I wanted to mention, we've talked about a little bit before, but now we have a more concrete idea of what that looks like. We know the county's been in discussions about jail facilities and the opportunity to do that. And we have the area on the other side, the west side of 101, where the C Street landfill was at one point. And we've gotten the final order from the Department of Ecology, and we've got the consent decree that we had on that piece of property has been released. With that, we have about 13 acres of land that the city owns over there, and the area that will need to be capped in order to satisfy the environmental concerns is only about 4 acres. So there's a substantial amount of land over there that we are open to discussions with the county about if they're looking for a new place to potentially site a jail facility. That's one piece.
I had a hard time hearing you on that.
Oh.
So what would the county, how could we help you on that?
Well, it's so the area where the C Street landfill is, about 13 acres.
Yes.
4 acres needs to be capped and fenced and protected.
Yes.
There are additional there's additional land obviously outside of that. There's 9 left over. So if there's a discussion to be had, or if there's any interest, we just wanted to offer to discuss that with the county if you're looking for other opportunities rather than the ones you've already discussed for a new jail facility.
Oh.
And the other one was related to the residential area that's directly adjacent to Brockdale that the county owns, about the 90 acres up there. The area that's zoned for residential, I know the port had an interest in protecting some of that land from development. I don't know how much, but some of it. And is there a potential for, going back to that sewer treatment plant discussion, the satellite plan, a potential for a swap of some of that land for some additional land next to the current satellite facility so that we can have enough land for expansion of that sewer capacity in the future. Those are just 2 concepts. I'm definitely open to discussing any others, but wanted to throw those out there and have people, well, let's say run them up the flagpole and see who takes shots at it. Let's say it like that.
Jeff, just in keeping with the earlier themes of our meeting today, for C Street, what kind of utilities are available there? What do you think it would take to extend?
There is the bridge is there. There are utilities hanging underneath that bridge. I don't know exactly what the capacity is. I'm sure it will probably have to be upgraded as part of any development proposal. But I can find out the exact details and share those either at the next meeting that we have similar to this one or any other time.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, very interested in learning a little bit more about all of those pieces of land and what that might entail.
Jeff, does this back up to the Memorial Park? Is that
Across from that.
Backs up to the what?
If we could look into that and see if that
Across the
area-
highway.
It's
Huh?
It's on the
Across the
other
highway.
side of
On the other side of the highway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the west side of 101.
Okay.
Right?
But you would go by the Memorial Park to get there, yeah.
C Street Bridge that only our public works employees drive over.
Right.
That you know of.
Wow.
That we
People came on.
We were allowed to.
Yeah.
So it's just an open, now that we have, things are settled, well, I'll knock on wood when I say that. Now that things are almost complete with the Department of Ecology, we know what we have available over there and what uses might be discussed as part of it.
Well, Jeff, that is a long journey.
Boy, it's been a long
You
journey.
guys have been on a long journey. The idea that you see an end of that road is pretty spectacular.
Well, it was ignored for 35 years.
Right.
Seriously, the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of rallies that you guys have built over the years.
Getting the email that was the virtual thumbs up from the Department of Ecology was pretty great.
Up, the sunlight came in.
Right?
So-
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask about the jail facilities. Are we no longer in discussions with Grays Harbor County, or this, you're talking about one that the count would be in the county and the city would rent space by the body? Or are we talking about a county city jail?
The city has no interest in owning or operating a jail.
Come on.
They want to rent by the body.
Neither does the port. Say that.
Definitely.
But we do make use of that facility. We want to help our county partners satisfy that need as much as we possibly can. We recognize it's a need and a way that we can help. If we can help, we'd be happy to do it. We're happy to talk
outside
about
the
it.
box, Commissioners, interests me think about that is the possibility for exchange of money for use of the jail for land for future development. Not that we would, not when we name this, I'm just throwing that out there for us to think about and consider. They have a use in the jail. They get us, we decide we want to have the land, they pay off their bill with the land.
That is definitely something to talk
And
about.
how many acres of land are we talking about?
9.
9.
There's roughly
9 acres for
roughly
jail.
9.
And I think our consultants on the jail study said that we needed somewhere between 5 and 7.
Oh,
Oh, look
wow.
at that.
So a little bit left over.
Yeah.
The infrastructure should
For a park.
there.
Yeah.
That's what it was if we build it.
Yeah.
It will come.
Like in Lacey,
Programs we had a few years back.
Yeah, it'll have to be upgraded.
Yeah.
The stuff under the bridge is probably old, and we'll have to, there's a lot of details to be worked out. Like I said, I just wanted to mention the concept, have you all consider it, think about it a little bit, what opportunities might be available there, and if it's of any interest.
Wow, this is great.
Yeah, on
This
this
is exciting.
Yeah, on this discussion front, I am very supportive of this opportunity. And I'll be honest, one main reason is I'd like to maintain our downtown character as much as we can and provide as much retail opportunity as we can downtown. And if we can, we recognize the county seat and the significance of that. And if we can work on a bigger plan with a county campus or something along those lines downtown, where maybe the city has to vacate some land, some roads or things like that to support that, and ultimately the jail and jail facilities across the bridge on C Street. We also, I think, avoid the NIMBY conversations on building a jail in the county.
Oh, they're gonna happen. They're gonna happen.
So, but building it across the highway may be a little more palatable to some folks. But
Some people might even be intrigued about putting a jail on an old landfill.
Yeah.
not on the landfill.
Landfill adjacent.
Still treat people
That might, some of our
humanely there.
constituents
So.
might like that idea.
But I'm very supportive of that, and then specifically on the neighborhood residential zone, 90 acres. I know there was concerns about approach impacts and things like that. So what can we do to negotiate that further? Because ultimately, development for residential purposes is a high priority. I mean, we all nodded our head on that 5 minutes ago. So I'd like to negotiate on that a little bit more as well, and I'm very amenable to other options if there's a better choice down the road there.
The only thing I can see that would be a potential problem in that regard, because I think we'd be, for runway protection, we'd be out to swap, is where your location is for the satellite is also kind of in that same zone. So I don't know how that would be looked at for, FAA and for the future runway, if we could actually, swap that land, even though you're already you're already residing in that land. So we just have to look at
for additional stuff. Yeah. Well, and I think Wendy, you mentioned to me one of the things the port would be concerned about if this moves forward at all is lagoons, because lagoons attract birds, and birds and airplanes don't really mix well. So the type of treatment facility we have is the membrane bioreactor, and expanding that. Those don't require lagoons, but we want to make sure all air traffic is paramount safety. So we want to make sure all these things are compatible together. Like I said, there are many details to be worked out as part of that. It's just something we wanted to at least throw out there as help for all of us to achieve community goals. I'm sure there are 100 others. These are just the two that I thought of, and I'm sure our council will be willing to discuss others if there are opportunities for that.
Does the port have any plans to extend the runway on the airport?
Not officially. FAA will only offer money for expanding the length if we have a count of aircraft. So we don't have a tower, we don't have a current count. There are individuals that do counts for you, so we could hire that. We've talked about that. If we were to expand, we wanted to expand so much to where we would actually be offering more of a commercial type service, and whether that's some kind of commercial service to where it could be cargo, it doesn't have to be passenger service, but that they could use that length, and then you pretty much have to have the parallel taxiway to that. So there's discussions behind it. Again, that's a huge amount of money if we were to say, oh, let's just expand the runway and hope that we bring business here or something, some corporate jets or something. But if FAA were to fund it, that would be more enticing. Or we've been kind of involved in the emergency topics of, the Cascadia subduction, and we may be the last standing airport on the West Coast if all, actually happens the way they think it could. Then we might be that emergency source.
There's our grant request.
There's a grant request for that new grant writer, right? but that might entice some of those FEMA dollars, that kind of thing, to come in and actually lengthen that runway for that purpose too. So
yeah, but we as a commission have discussed expanding that runway for years.
Acquiring the land at least
acquiring
to do
the
it.
land to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And we've slowly done that. We've kind of pieced, a couple of years ago we purchased a private owner, at the end of one of our runways, just to expand that protection zone, and we kind of, as we grow, we keep expanding further and further. So.
But we need the length for bigger planes, and if we're going to be getting cargo and that sort of thing. They can land all they want. It's just they're stuck there without a longer runway.
Yeah.
They're just not getting. They're not going.
They can't take back unless they empty out.
Go ahead.
Just for my own personal interest, what is that extension? Is that like
how much?
Thousands of yards? Is it?
It kind of depends on what you're looking for. So right now we're just over 5,000.
Okay.
If you think about Orange County, the John Wayne Airport, I think it's 59.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so it's definitely
Quite
but if you start looking at commercial traffic, you're looking at 9,000 to 11,000.
So double.
Depending how large you're looking.
Gotcha.
Just as an aside, if anybody's ever had the opportunity or not had the opportunity to fly out of John Wayne, it is interesting and fun.
Yeah. They shut everything down. Quiet.
Straight up, and then
They have a noise issue. By law, they have to go
Yeah.
Yeah.
shut everything down at a certain, you're kind of like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And that's an interesting point about the air about the runway. And is that a primary? Is that kind of a primary focus of the port right now? Is development of air, or is it industrial on the port, or is it all of the above? Just kind of
more, more industrial, yeah.
But you know, we are being considered as one of the replacement airports for SeaTac. Now, I don't foresee, this is my own opinion, I don't foresee that happening, but what I foresee is that whatever airport is chosen to be the expansion SeaTac will displace some other aviation assets from that airport, and we are likely to be one of those to pick up those assets. And at this point, the runway's long enough for that. But if you're going to do any kind of commercial stuff, as Linda said, we're going to have to expand the runway. And there's been some talk about why can't we have a commuter airline out of here? Well, you know, Olympia had a commuter airline for years and went broke. So there just isn't the support for that kind of traffic out of here. But general aviation, there's a lot of support. We're building what is it? What size is that hangar?
Which one?
The new one.
The Squirrel?
No, the new one's just
the new one you just passed. It'll be 60 by 80, private.
Yeah,
hangar.
private hangar's going in a great big hangar. It's a private hangar, but that's the kind of growth that we're going to see, I think.
Yeah. And that's that commercial coordinating committee. They've kind of honed it down further to where our listing is really general aviation only. It wouldn't even be considered for cargo at this point now. We'll argue that when FedEx knocks on the door and says we want to move into the whatever.
So we're off the list, is that what
We're not off the list, but they wouldn't consider us for passenger and they wouldn't consider us for cargo, most likely. We would be only considered for that general aviation,
Well,
which is what we
fine.
currently, that's our main, use right now is the general aviation.
And it's particularly intriguing to me because airplanes are cool and everything, and so what that brings to, I could totally see the advantages of the aerospace industry, and we're a aviation state in Washington. I've heard that one once or twice, but from a freight mobility aspect, this is something I think we really need to get out ahead of and be discussing as well, because if there is expansion of GA or commercial, there is going to be a freight component, I'm going to assume, and with the limitations of Highway 101, city streets, Highway 3, I'm thinking of the comings ins and goings outs of the port and what that may look like, and do we need to start designing our roads to handle potentially freight to get down Johns Prairie Road to Highway 3? Do we need to be pushing the state to be looking at capital investments and looking at that, and Highway 8 and Highway 101? I mean, that chokes down to one lane, and we see traffic impacts at 8 o'clock in the morning just going to work, kind of thing. So,
If we're going to bring in industrial development, something's going to have to be shipped out.
yes. So that, again, that's,
100%.
yeah, I'm definitely intrigued in how we can work together on that, because quite frankly, freight impacts in the city is going to be difficult. We just spent $280,000 to repair a roadway that was beaten to death by heavy truck traffic, and it's a residential neighborhood basically, and that came out of the pockets of all of the city residents, and that's difficult one to swallow, and so we need to make sure we're thinking about that and we have some skin in on that, because I could definitely see traffic impacts as well as just overall infrastructure in the city being something that we need to be conscious of, assuming the county as well. So.
You're right, and regardless of the airport, even expansion into the building, like the newly replaced 32,000 square foot building, we've got companies looking at Johns Prairie land as buildings go up. I mean, there's going to be an impact. It's going to be large.
Just sit down at the corner of Johns Prairie and three and watch.
It's a lot of traffic up there.
That's a difficult one.
Well, there actually was an opportunity, but the state kind of threw it away. They had brought in this new kid a few years ago. He was just brilliant, and now he's running the Belfry thing. He's brilliant, but he was so new he didn't know how to stay in the box. And so when we went down there and looked at it, we've had issues there in that corner forever. The only answer is to go all the way over and come down on the Mason Lake road to go sideways, but if that would work, we already have that basically a little further down. So this kid comes out there, he looks at it, and he says, no, it can be done. What do you mean it can be done? Well, we just move it over just to touch it. It becomes an oblong traffic circle. And this way, when they're coming off, they can come off further because you have a creek there. That's the big impact.
Right.
You come off further and have the one lane going up. You take off about 10 feet of that hill is all, and have it merge back in. So that all the traffic you see coming down John Prairie now, that whole road area would be the area coming into the traffic circle. With a free ride, he's like, holy kid, where are you? You know, where'd you come from? Then started through the process, was all excited, and it got shut down at the top of the state and was told to stay back in your box. Literally. But he's still out there. And someday I'd love to see us find a way to bring that guy back and resurrect that, because that is the only answer I've ever heard in all the years I've been here.
Yeah,
He
that
was right.
They were going to do that for a Dodge
Yeah.
to support the big dump trucks and stuff. And then a Dodge went away. I think that project went away.
Yep, that'll happen.
They were going to come behind Bayshore between the pit and
Right.
the store
Yeah.
and come out that last driveway
Right.
at that roundabout.
You put a roundabout there.
Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure that we respect everybody's time. I'm glad I threw those two things out there and nobody was shooting daggers at me with their eyes, so that's good. I'll take that as a win. But just kind of closing comments, I want to again thank you all very much for being here today. I think this was a great discussion. I'm glad we were able to have it. Hopefully we can have it again in the future. And I want to see what the appetite is, just generally, to do a meeting of this type twice a year, maybe once a year. Mark, Wendy, and I did discuss expanding this group, but for the first one we wanted to keep it a little bit smaller, but we've talked about expanding with the PUDs, the boards of the PUDs, and other entities that would help us kind of focus the efforts of this community in one direction. So we'll look at doing that for the next time. And also, as part of the lobbying piece that we talked about a little bit earlier, if we were to do this twice a year, or even once a year, schedule that towards September or October, so that we're all kind of on the same page as we move into the next year's legislative session, is an idea that we discussed too. So happy to talk about that. Mark, Wendy, and I will sit down and we'll, as long as there's an appetite for it and no objection, plan for the next one, and including other partners. And then happy to hear Mark's thoughts, Wendy's thoughts, anybody here's thoughts on how this went and maybe how we can improve it for next time.
I like this a lot, and I just wanted to include our neighbors,
Yep.
especially the tribes.
Yeah.
So, but I think what we're doing is a great step in the right direction.
I think a half a year is too long. I would say 3 times a year, every quarter maybe.
Okay.
Get together. I think 6 months, a year goes by. I mean, a lot happens there. So.
And I think it would be important to time it too in advance of budget discussions, because if there are opportunities to leverage those dollars, if the county's working on a road project that abuts to city streets, can we come in together? Mobilization costs are good, where we start on those things. So identifying those opportunities in advance of budget discussions would be super helpful. And if we're continuing to have these conversations more regularly, hopefully those opportunities would become more apparent.
Jeff, could I throw maybe something out there related to capital improvement? So is it possible to kind of put together a synthesized capital improvement plan, kind of like a one-pager that we could share with everybody? And then maybe I would ask for the reciprocal. We can kind of put those all together, and then, if there's things that don't seem to align, 5, 6, 7 years out, we can start tweaking those. I think that would be good. And
It's a really great idea.
I know our capital improvement plans out there, and staff have put a lot of time in on that. But it's it's buried in the budget kind of thing, So it'd be good if we could do that kind of like a one-pager between the 3, 4 organizations. Then it would help me really understand too. That kind of my comment. Are you focusing more towards aviation, or are you focusing more towards on-site industrial? It would be good then when we're talking internally about what are our at a retreat, or what are our priorities, what do we want to be socking money away for. It'd be good to have that stuff fresh in my mind. I know I would appreciate it. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Great. And then also maybe we can bring people together to talk about the funds that are coming down.
Yeah.
And let's prioritize those, and then get the message out to the to Commerce or whoever the state decides is going to manage that money, and let them know that Mason County and Shelton and the ports all want to be a part of that pot.
I know congressional delegation, Congressman Kilmer, I know he's working on a bill called the Recompete Act, which is potential for repeat funding for chronically distressed areas. I know I love that term, isn't that awesome? But that's an opportunity. You know, it's not just a one and done. You know, it's something where we could potentially, over the course of time, and, you know, again, joint lobbying and supporting things like that together collectively. That's a big voice, and I'd be interested in talking more and bringing in, you know, our other electeds into discussions at particular points in time.
And it'll help that we'll all be in the same congressional district.
Yes.
Yes, that'll be
a bit easier.
As for this meeting and the success of it, anytime I walk away from a meeting with new thoughts, new ideas, and a new area to focus on and get something done, I consider that a success. We attend a lot of meetings where nothing happens. I worry if we start to have too many meetings, it becomes a meeting of exercise, and just leaving each other, saying hi, and then we start picking up little pieces. But if we set it up to where it is a meeting of moving things forward a little bit, I love the idea of setting up schedules around budget and lobbying. Those are the two times where it's probably most needed. But I do think that this has been worthwhile, and I am actually walking away with this a lot better perspective than I came in the door with, to be honest with you.
I think another thing that would be helpful in a future meeting is we were talking about how some of the codes in the city are different from the codes in the county. If we could each bring our codes together and we could work together, where whose is better, right? And so, okay, we're going to take that from there, we're going to take that from there, and let's put it together, and we'll have a plan. If we could bring both sides together and work that as one universal plan, that would be fantastic together.
Last thing about, one more thing for me is about grant writing. When we come to a grant, or if someone finds a grant opportunity, that we should share it with all the entities, and that we can get we can get the deer instead of chasing rabbits, you know, engagement, right? So I think if we can have that collaborative spirit, like, oh, I got this grant, well, let's make it countywide, you know, part-wide too, you know, so let's, I think that's the kind of attitude that I'd like to, well, this opened that up for me. Let's just share this, you know, let's get a bigger prize than small scale, get a big scale.
It's the thing popped into my mind when Commissioner Netherland mentioned finding the grants. Everybody remembers the guy that was on at midnight, you know, with the question marks on his jacket. That's exactly what popped into my mind. But yeah, point taken.
That kid became very wealthy.
Yes, he did.
He's comfortable now. Yeah.
Thank you all very much. Hope you enjoyed breakfast, and have a fantastic weekend.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Yay team. Go team.
Go team. Go team Mason.